Turning overseas, Lebanese Christians are beginning to arm themselves and organize self-defense units. In fact, there's growing anxiety among Christians throughout much of the Middle East. Islamic extremists are triggering fear. In Iraq, thousands of Christians are fleeing their homes. That's because ISIS militants are rampaging through those communities and forcing Christians to choose between converting to Islam or facing death. Isaac Six is the advocacy director for the organization International Christian Concern, and he joins us from Washington, D.C. to tell us more about this. Welcome to Arise America, Isaac. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Debbie. Thanks for having me.
Give us just a bit of a primer on the history of the number of Christians in this part of the country, particularly Iraq and Syria, and historically what their position in the culture there has been.
Well, Christians have been in Iraq and Syria for nearly 2,000 years. They're one of the oldest Christian communities in the region or on earth anywhere, and many of them actually still speak the language that Jesus spoke. So they've been a part of the community for a very long time. Traditionally, they've played roles of being peacemakers in the community. In Iraq, many of the Christians are very well educated, are an important part of the economy. As you mentioned, though, in terms of numbers, we've seen just drastic drop-offs of Christians in the area. In Iraq, you had over 1 million Christians, about 1.2 million Christians in 2003. And that number is down to about 450,000. It could be even lower. That's a conservative estimate. So 500,000 Christians have fled the country in just about the last 10 years. And now we're seeing what could be the last exodus of Christians from the country, with ISIS rampaging across northern Iraq and Mosul and the Nineveh Plain.
Yeah, and give us some more details about why they're fleeing. What has been happening to them since the uprising of ISIS?
Well, essentially, Christians are given the choice. You can either convert to Islam, pay the tax, it's called a jizya tax, which is required of religious minorities, or you can face execution. And the only other option sometimes given is you can leave or you can flee. Most of the Christians we talked to, I was just there a couple of weeks ago, meeting with a lot of Christians who have fled, and most of them we talked to, they didn't even take their chances. As soon as they heard ISIS was coming, they grabbed everything they could. Many of them had to flee overnight and ran out the door for the nearest safety that they could find.
I think many of us will remember the news reports we've heard over the summer of the plight of the Yazidis, which are a Christian sect that were trapped on a mountain in Iraq, and that's, of course, what brought on the United States airstrikes to allow them an opportunity to leave. It's my understanding that some of them chose not to leave. What's their plight right now?
That's true. Some chose not to leave, and there were some small Christian groups that also chose not to leave those areas. For anyone who's fallen under the control of ISIS, the plight really is bleak. You know, we get reports pretty consistently of groups who are trapped in ISIS-controlled areas who are pleading for help. Many of them tried to burn their identification documents so they couldn't be identified as Yazidi or Christian. And from what we know, from people who are still talking to them, conditions are very, very difficult. Many forced to either convert, many forced to follow Islamic law. So those who can are still trying to escape from the area, but there are many who are still trapped behind ISIS lines.
So what are organizations like yours, and these are these small, nimble organizations, if you will, able to do to help these groups?
Well, we've been working very hard since early June and the fall of Mosul to bring assistance, just in terms of basic relief, food, water, medicine, shelter, to the estimated 1.5 million IDPs in northern Iraq. The international community is responding, and the United Nations is getting involved. Unfortunately, when we were there just a couple of weeks ago, we saw very, very little international aid getting to the areas in Erbil and some other parts of the country. So right now, small organizations like International Christian Concern and others who are there on the ground are really bearing the majority of the burden for helping these IDPs. Unfortunately, the need is just tremendous, and so we alone can't do this, and we really want to see international aid move a lot faster.
Well, we do wish you all the best. Isaac Six, thanks so much for coming in.
Thank you, Debbie.
This is Arise America.